What a wonderful day to be alive.
Amen. Yes, yes.
What a wonderful day to be alive. God has truly blessed us, and we are thankful for all that He does for us.
Yes.
I wanted to make certain to help our music minister this morning. We were kind of caught off guard. Brandon had an emergency, and so I did want to make sure that we weren't just going to cut off guard there. So, God is good, and we continue to move forward.
Yes.
In John 1, we find our text for the day. I think the ministry of ministers did a very fine job in scripture reading this morning, communion, and so on and so forth. So what a blessing. What a blessing. So to disciple like Christ, how do we relate the message and the gospel of Christ to the world? How do we do that? And how is that important for us? How is that important for us as we think about it? In John chapter 1, verse 35, it says, again, the next day after John stood, and two of his disciples and looked upon them, Jesus, as he walked, he said, "Behold the Lamb of God." And the two disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. Then they, oh, there it is. I can see it good. There we go. And so the next day, John was there again with two of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." When the two disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them following and asked, "What do you want?" He said, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying?" "Come," he replied, "and you will see." So they went and saw where he was staying, and they spent that day with him. It was about 4 p.m. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the two who heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah. This is the Christ." And he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas," which was translated, or when translated, is Peter. And so we see Jesus as he is calling the disciples together, and we recognize that we are Christians and that it is our duty to follow Christ. As we follow him, our question should be, how does Jesus disciple? How does he share the good news? How does he share himself with the world? One of the things that we must recognize is that we should not reject other disciples. We should not reject other disciples. Part of the problem with the world, Brother Mo, is that oftentimes people feel like when they arrive that they want to keep everything to themselves. They don't want other people to enjoy what they enjoy. We are naturally sometimes a little bit selfish. We don't want others to enjoy. We don't want other disciples. And a lot of times we like to keep people down too. Because if I am the chairperson of a committee, or if I'm over something, then I don't want anybody else to take over. And which is why oftentimes we find churches that are dying out, because we fail to train people who are coming forward.
Amen.
And so it becomes important that we realize that you're not the only one. You're not the stuff. You're not the end all. Because someday you will be called home. And the question is, how great will the thing that you led be once you leave? Brother Williams, in my own life, I read this book not long ago entitled From Good to Great. And as I was reading that, Brother Mill, we need to take this down. I'm getting at the age I have to see it when I'm thinking about it, because I'll forget it. Because I don't have no workers' comp around here. I'm tripping fine. They say, Pastor, we praying for you. But the fact is, you know, when you think about this whole idea of discipling others and bringing people to Christ, I read this book. It was entitled From Good to Great. And one of the things in this book, it's not a spiritual book per se. It's not a Christian book per se. It is a book about business. And the writer of this book says that there are some ways that a company can become great, and then there are ways that a company can just stay good. And he says that the enemy to great is good. He said because as long as we are satisfied with just being good, we'll never aspire to be great. And so he gives a few principles about moving a company from good to great. One of the things that he says that when a company is known by its leader and only its leader, that most of the time the companies that he studied failed. And he went through the Chrysler Corporation, which when I was growing up was known by Lee Iacocca. And the Chrysler Corporation eventually went bankrupt and somebody had to purchase it and mail it out and all of those things. Same thing happened with Dave Thomas and Wendy's. Dave Thomas and Wendy's, it was Dave Thomas, you know. And over time, it failed. And it had to be, once again, another company that needed to be bailed out. And he went through company after company. He talked about it. And so finally he came up with the company Gillette. And Gillette now sells more razors than any other company. I mean, it's the leading company with regards to selling razors. And nobody could think of the name of the CEO. Because he just did his job. And he recognized how important doing his job was. And his name wasn't important to the company. What was important to the company was Gillette. Well, one of the other things that he says is, and by the way, let me say this, just so that you can understand and our leaders are understanding. One of the most asked questions that I've ever gotten at this church by people who are guests here, the thing that they ask me the most, Brother Wesley, is, who is the pastor? What is your name? A lot of times people will ask that because, matter of fact, somebody once told me, I kid you not, they said, I didn't know that it was a predominantly black church because the pastor's name wasn't on the sign. No, told me that. And so they didn't see the pastor's name on the sign, and you look in the bulletin, they don't find the pastor's name there, and you try to figure out, well, why don't we put the pastor's name on the sign? Well, the trustees originally came to me in our old building, and they asked us if we want to redo the sign. And we need to make sure to put your name on it. I said, well, you know what? I'm more than glad for you to redo the sign as long as you don't put my name on it. And one of the reasons why is because after reading this book, I discovered and started to think about some things. I thought about the fact that he was right about these companies that would fail. But then I started thinking about all of the churches in Columbus who went through a lot of turmoil after the death of the pastor. And almost every single church that was known by the pastor's name instead of the church's name, that church ended up having many, many problems. And so from the very beginning, I recognized that this church didn't need to be known by my name. As a matter of fact, my good friend down the road at Newburgh, Pastor Moore says, Shaw, your name doesn't have to be on the board for people to know you. Everybody in Columbus knows who the pastor of Liberty Hill is. But we've never set out to make certain that that was the case. So that's why when you go to the website, you don't see my big face on there. Because my face isn't important. My name isn't important. The only time you'll see my face is if you come to visit this church for the first time, you'll get a card, and that card just reminds you that you saw me when you came, and that's about it. The church needs to be known by the church. Yes. It is the bride of Christ. And I dare not try to cheat with Christ's bride. So therefore, I'm not important. The church is important. Christ is important. But beyond that, the other thing that he says is he says that a leader is not great unless that leader is concerned about where the company will go after the leader's death or retirement. Yes. And so I'm very concerned about what happens after my death or my retirement or transfer. Because what I would not want to happen is for people to rely on the pastor so much that if the pastor's gone, people say, we don't know what to do. Discipleship is about making sure that you put yourself out of a job. Discipleship is about not being so jealous that you can't let somebody else do it. It is about recognizing that all of us are making mistakes as we live this life. and that we need to be leading someone else to the place where Christ is. Wherever you are today, you can thank someone for getting you where you are. And so we must not reject this idea of discipleship, and we must not reject this idea of others coming. Notice that when Jesus called the first one in, others kept on coming. And that's our job. Our job is to continue to bring others to Christ. And our job is not to be so caught up in staying where I am and being who I am that I take up all of the space with Christ. The songwriter said there's plenty good room at the cross. And oftentimes the reason that we don't think that there's room at the cross, because Sister Vicki Williams, we're not thinking about the cross, we're thinking about the glory.
That's good.
But there's plenty of room at the cross. There's plenty of room in the field. There's plenty of harvest in the field, but the laborers are few. And so it is our job to disciple others and not to reject them. Notice also in verse 41, you'll see that in verse 41, that they were not slowing around about this business either. This was something that was important to them, and this was something that they was ready to get to right now. Look at 41 and you'll see these words. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother. He didn't wait. When he realized that he saw the Messiah, he was not slowing around. The first thing he did was to find his brother. There are some people who are waiting to serve the Lord. There are some people who are waiting to share the gospel. They'll have more time when they retire. They'll have more time when the kids get out of the house. They've got all kinds of excuses in terms of when they'll have more time. But in fact, guess what? You'll never have more time. There'll always be some excuse as to why you're waiting. Why do you wait, my brother? Somebody's sinking today. Throw out the lifeline. Somebody needs you today. And while they need you today, there's always an excuse. There's always an excuse as to why I can't serve God. And so we must at some point in time decide to put away the excuse and to say that I'm going to serve him no matter what. I'm going to share the good news, the gospel. I'm going to spread it no matter what. There's no time to wait, no time to waste, but it's time now. Once you find something good, go tell somebody else. We need to learn to be like ants. When you find something sweet on the picnic table, go back and tell all the rest. And line up. That's how it ought to be. I mean, if we really believe in our brain, Sister Lisa, if we really believe that God is truly good, and we really believe that we have found and we have in our life the Messiah and the Savior, then it ought to be an urgent task to go tell our brothers and our sisters. You know, there are very few of us who's good at keeping a secret. Let's be honest. We say we are, but we really not. Because usually we tell somebody. We might not tell everybody, but we tell somebody. Can't wait to tell somebody. Texting it, calling it, and everything else. Inboxing, you wouldn't believe it. There's a whole lot of folk that they don't tell on themselves. And don't get mad at me either. I bet there's not a person in this room that never told a secret. Now, usually you don't tell your secret. But you tell somebody's secret. And so when we find God, when we find the Lord in our life, and he's come into our lives, and we've accepted Christ, I mean, when we see something beautiful, we need to tell it. This is something we have permission to tell. To go and tell the good news. The songwriter says, and we'll be singing it in about 2 months now, go tell it on the mountain. Tell it everywhere, over the hill and through the passages and whatever, in the valley, wherever you go, tell it. Yeah, because he's that good. And here's a brother who just couldn't wait. Said he went, and the first thing he did, said, look, we found the Messiah. And so, church, it's time that we begin to put the first thing first. Do you know that everything else in your life is secondary?
Yes, yes.
And it's often sad because usually when it comes to what we do for the Lord in the church, for our brothers and sisters, usually that's the last. You know, even when we give to the church, and you know, I'd rather say anything about money, but I tell you, most of the time when people give to the church, they give out of their excess. Whatever's left over. Pay bills, buy food, take the kids to skating rink and everywhere else. And then when the offering plate comes, you find lint, cough drops, about 50 cents all mixed in together. And so we got to be urgent about this thing. We got to take it as something that's important. It is important for us to get the news out, to get the word out, to tell people that Jesus lives. Believe it or not, there are new people who need to know. There are new people who need to know. I want to share my heart with this church this morning because I need your help. I need your help. It's not going to cost you anything but your time. I need your help. I need you to add to your prayer list a group of people that many of our American brothers and sisters are mad at. I would love for you to add to your prayer list the Islamic community. And specifically, I don't want to pray anything else other than that they receive Christ. They receive Christ into their life. It's time for us to stop fighting and start carrying the gospel. The gospel is the key. It is the good news. Do you know any one of you in this room? Well, I shouldn't say any one of you. Somebody in here is probably about as mean as a snake, but I'll just leave room out for one person. But most of you in this room, if you got up right now and you got really upset with me, you were really mad. I mean, you fighting mad. This girl, you just getting ready to knock me, just go right on upside my head, just really mad at me. And all of a sudden somebody came in and told you, you just won the lottery. I mean, who could go through and just get me? You could get that ticket and say, see you. You might forget to say goodbye because you'd be on your way. Somebody wrote you a big check right before you got in an argument or fight or something like that, you would go right on your way. Here's my point. Good news diffuses. When it's good news, it changes your life. And that's what Christ is for us. He's good news. And so that's why this brother had to run and tell his brother. But we have untouchable people in our world that we don't want to be bothered with. We don't want them saved. We don't want to share the gospel with them because we like holding our grudges. We like holding on to our anger. Sometimes it feels good to be mad at somebody. In some ways it makes us feel better. It makes us feel like we're better than them. But in fact, we're not. And so this is urgent news. But not only is it urgent news, notice in verse 42 it says that we found the Messiah. They're presenting good news. They're presenting good news. I believe in the power of Christ.
Yes.
If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be here. But I believe in the power of Christ. So I'll give you my spiel again and we'll be on our way. You've heard it before, but I want to make sure you got it good. A Rolls-Royce salesman never has to talk about a Ford. It's as simple as that. A Rolls-Royce salesman does not have to talk about a Ford. See, many times in the church, we do so much talking about the devil that we miss the point. That devil is bad dude. He never stops. Oh, the devil, what he did to me this week. In my life, your life would be so much better because the devil got you down. You never have to talk about a Ford when you sell a Rolls Royce. Number one, the fellow that comes into a Rolls Royce showroom realizes that he has something that makes him want to look at something other than a Ford. He don't want to look at a Ford. And by the way, all of you who have Fords, don't write me letters. I'm not saying about your car. It's okay to have a Ford. But the guy who wants a Rolls Royce, he goes in, and that's what he came for. He came for a Rolls Royce. And when he comes in, the salesman knows that his product is superior to everything else. And so he doesn't have to tell the person, you know what, this is so much better than a Ford. He simply, the Rolls Royce salesman just simply tells you about the Rolls Royce. You don't have to go under the hood for 15 years. The leather has been selected from select cows and calves. And it's been hand stitched. And it took us a week to work on. And the wood veneer interior has come from a single tree. And just in case there are some damages to the wood, we've actually saved back some wood at our factory that's numbered, just so if we have to replace something, that we'll match the grain with this same car. When we got ready to paint it, we made sure that we painted it, and then well, first of all, we kind of electrified the metal. We did a process so that we didn't just paint it, we actually made the metal suck the paint to it almost like a magnet. And so we painted it, and then we sanded it, and then we painted it, we sanded it, we painted it, we sanded it, we painted it, and we sanded it until it shines just right. The look of the car is going to be perfect. You'll never hear this car in the comfort. If someone's driving for you, get in the back seat and you can put your feet up because the seats recline. Just push back. He says, if you open the trunk, there's enough room that you can put your big trunk in there. You can put all of your belongings so that you can take a 21-day cruise if you would like. It'll hold all your stuff in the trunk there. When we do the tires, we take a special molded kind of plastic and put it on the inside of the rim so that in case the tire should go flat or in case you should get a nail, you'll be able to drive 50 more miles to the next station. So he tells you those things. And so he can go through. If you like to have dinner in your car, you just pull back from the back of the seat, and a tray table will come down almost like you're on an airplane so that you can eat in the car. And so he can tell you all of these things about this Rolls Royce. And after a while, you say, now that sounds pretty good. The only question is, how much does it cost? That's the only question. The salesman never has to talk about Ford. The only thing he has to do is show you how wonderful his product is. And then from there, the only question is the cost. So my brothers and my sisters, if we really want to sell this thing, if we really want to present the good news, it is to talk about Christ and nothing else. It is to present Christ, the fact that he's loved us so much that God decided to give us his only born son. John 3:16. And he lowered himself enough that he came down through human flesh, through 42 generations, to save us. He's so wonderful that he walked the streets of earth and he healed blind people and he made lame people to walk. He's so wonderful that he didn't discriminate against men and women. He healed men, he healed women. The woman with the issue of blood, she could testify today, and she would even tell you that he would at times allow his healing to flow even when he wasn't doing it. She just touched his garments. He wasn't actively touching her. She was touching just his clothes, and she was made whole. He didn't discriminate against men. He didn't discriminate against women. The little children could tell you that one day it seemed like they were getting ready to turn them away, and he said, let them come too. The hungry could come and they could testify today and say, I was out there and I was hungry. His disciples told me to leave because they didn't have anything for me. And he said, tell them to sit down because I'm going to feed them today. And he fed 5,000 souls that day. I tell you, he's very personal because he would stop by houses, ask Peter's family, and ask the publicans and the sinners. Didn't make any difference if you were rich or poor. He would still stop by your house and enjoy a meal and talk to you. And if he didn't meet you at the house, you can ask a short little man who climbed up in a tree. He said, come on down, I'm going to your house. He stopped by I guess you could call it the rec center with the pool. Because there was a man, the pool of Bethesda, who had been there a long time, and Jesus came by. And he was just waiting to be healed. Jesus healed him. Doesn't matter how many people are there. Jesus was in the midst of what I guess was kind of like a mega church. They couldn't even get the man in, so his friends took him up to the roof and cut through and brought him down. Y'all don't have to bring folks to Liberty Hill that way. Bring them through the door. But Jesus, he did what he does all the time. He made everything all right. His mother can tell you from the very beginning, he was doing that from weddings to corners, from houses. Jesus is there. Everything is all right. But then one day he died for you and for me. He died. He was accused, but had never done anything. And he allowed his perfect self to be placed on the cross of Calvary for you and for me. And so, by now, hopefully you see the point. But then, he doesn't stop there. Old preachers used to say he died all night Friday, and he died on Saturday, and he died all night. And so that part, that part is good theatrics. He died. But if you've ever been to a good old Baptist church, you realize that when the preacher really gets to his place, when he really wants them to know how good his Rolls Royce is, he'll say early one morning.
Yes, I like that.
He got up.
Yes.
Now, I don't have to shout it this morning, Sister Jackie Turner. All I have to do is tell you to look behind me. Something that you'll not see in many churches across this country. You go to some churches across the country and you'll see behind the preacher a cross. And you'll see some man, an image of a man, hanging on that cross. But look behind me today. And all you see is an empty cross. You see an empty cross because he got up one day.
Yes.
And that's proof enough to me that he's coming back again.
Yes.
See, it's good news that he died. And it's good news that he got up. But it's